Making these figures in a larger size seemed logical. Here's a look at the brand new Hiya toys. This is the Star Trek 2009 Exquisite Super Series Spock. Hiya Toys introduces the latest addition to their Exquisite Super Series, Spock from Star Trek 2009. Set on the day of James T. Kirk's birth, the storyline unfolds with his father's heroic sacrifice against a Romulan mining vessel. Meanwhile, Ambassador Spock, scorned by his Vulcan neighbors for his half-human heritage, becomes entangled in the events. This brand new 1/12 scale Spock action figure, standing at 6.2 inches tall, faithfully captures his appearance from the 2009 film. Clad in the iconic blue uniform crafted in real cloth, the figure offers superior posability and aesthetic appeal. Finely detailed accessories include Spock's communicator, phaser pistol, touchpad, and more. 2 times the culture, 2 times the size of an Exquisite mini-series. Before, though, we get a closer look at the Star Trek 2009 Exquisite Super Series Spock, I'd like to thank the folks over at Hiya Toys that were kind enough to provide this sample. This is an early look at the figure slated to drop in June 2025 for $104.99. Shall we now maybe take the tape measure and see how tall the figure stands? We all agree. Okay, let's go ahead and take, though, the tape measure. Spock is going to stand about the same as James T. The figure is going to be about 6 inches in height, or about 15 centimeters tall. Reluctantly handing over the captain's chair to this guy here, here's what Spock looks like with James T. Kirk. He maybe is just a little bit taller. I know I said the figures were really about the same size, but you can see, though, that, yeah, Spock is just a little bit taller than Kirk. He is certainly, though, as already mentioned, 2 times the size of an Exquisite mini-series. Here's what the figure looks like also with Spock from the same film. Stand down. Stand down. The figure does come included with a display stand. That was terrible. The stand itself does have Star Trek printed along the front. It does also have a peg off to the far corner that if you do happen to have yourself an adjustable neck, like I just happen to have an adjustable neck right here, this can just plug onto the end of this like that, and now you got yourself quite an excessively long neck that there's no way that that's going to accommodate Spock unless he's leaping in the air. He does also have another available option. The available option involves me having to take off this piece, and underneath all this is an actual surprise. The fact that Khan was into the darkness, yeah, that was a terrible surprise. Inside, though, inside the box, you actually can see yourself. There's a little baggie. The baggie at the bottom does actually say, if I flip this around, flip it around this way, you can see it does say Hiya down below here. This would, of course, be good for storing all the extra accessories that don't plan to make their way onto Spock. You just put them into the baggie. You don't have to worry about putting them back in the box. And then you put the baggie inside of this box, and you basically would just put your lid over top of that. Right? Right. I did also want to show you guys, though, as well. Let's just reach off to the side here. Let's bring in Captain Kirk's display stand. That you can see that they are identical to one another. If you choose to go this route, obviously it's going to give the figures a little bit more height. I mean, you're dealing with what is that, like 2.5 inches? 2.5 inches or so? Let's just see how deep these are. I'm going to measure off just to the top of this. Does anybody really care? It's an inch. It's an inch. It's going to give them more of an inch height than every other figure that's going to be around him. Some may choose not to have this display with the figures. One thing, though, that's interesting, too, is that the base has 2 different options. You can take this one off, and you can swap it instead with a Swiss cheese top. Where now, instead of having just the 1 hole on the back, now you're going to be copying that another 8 times. Because, again, there's like a total of 9 holes. What you can also do with these as well, just grab this piece here. Again, I'm going to grab here Captain Kirk's. The figure does also come included, although I don't have them here. They're just off to the side. They come with these eye brackets, similar in the same vein as the Exquisite mini-series. If you have yourself an eye bracket, you have yourself 2 stands. You attach the 2 stands together, and then you basically have this. I think if they went the route of doing something like this, instead of maybe just going with basic black with only just holes on the top, I mean, connecting multiple of these bases together, you're only going to be getting this same, multi-holed top just multiple times. Had they maybe just instead changed this to terrain, hey, there you go. Now you would have had maybe a reason to want to connect more than these together. I don't think I really would ever see myself using the eye brackets. I do certainly use them when it comes to the Exquisite mini-series, but from the Super Series standpoint, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would ever see myself ever doing that. Let's get this back, though, onto the display stand. Just plug that in place. We'll kind of move Kirk's out of the way here. The adjustable neck does have 4 adjustable knuckle joints. One here, 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 here as well. And all of these can bend individually. So, of course, if you just want to plug this into, say, let's just say for this, you want to put it right in the middle. I mean, again, like you could put Spock on here. Let's just go ahead and take the figure. But you can already see, like, how high does this need to be? I mean, even if you just adjust the neck down as far as it can go really around his waist. But then again, like, that's just a whole lot of extra excess. What you may, though, choose to do instead, just getting the stand here, what you may, though, choose to do instead is that each of these also have the available option of detaching. So if you find that there's too much going on here, you can reduce that length. Just untab the last piece, obviously the waist clip, plug that onto the end of it, and now you've got yourself a much shorter, easier to deal with neck joint, and then of course that would just plug around Spock's waist. As for Spock's accessories, the figure does some of the things the same as Kirk. The figure, first of all, does come included as a communicator. The communicator, while not loving the look of the 2009 one, happens though to be the exact same one that we already got with the Dear Captain. These don't open up at all, but they're well painted. You can see this sandwiched on the side. Top and the bottom are black. The middle is silver. Nice little communicators. He does also have, of course, as you already see, he does have a belt. Now you can take the communicator, and if, let's just say he's on an away mission, there's a holster on this side that's smaller than the one on this side. So this would be the side for the phaser. This would be the side for the communicator. Just to get his arm out of the way. Now we can take the communicator and slide it down here. The pocket itself is kind of a faux leather material. I just want to make sure, of course, I don't split this while trying to put the communicator. This one seems to be more of a struggle than it was with Captain Kirk's. But anyways, that basically would just fit inside the holster here. He does also come included with a touchpad. I was kind of surprised, being that he was a science officer and all, they didn't come included with a tricorder. Tricorder, by the way, though, going back to Captain Kirk's, this was not a tricorder. I think this was just the log device, which I kind of bounced back and forth. I said tricorder, log device, tricorder log. I think it is actually, though, a log device. And then, of course, we do get ourselves a touch screen pad here for Spock. There's nothing actually on the screen, but at least, though, they tinted it in blue. So it's not just like clear plastic. Well, it is obviously clear plastic, but you know what I mean. The figure does also have a couple of different hands for suitably for holding all these accessories, by the way. So, like, he has this hand here where you can take the touchpad. This is the hand, by the way. By the way, just before I actually take the pad and fit it into his hand, let me just comment on, though, the state of the hands. I do feel like maybe there's too much red on some of these fingers, and you'll notice that seems to be a trend. Anyways, though, let's take the touchpad. The touchpad basically just slides inside the grip like that, and you can hold it, and you can hold it pretty well. You may also notice, though, by the placement of the pointer, yeah, this hand would also be good for holding the following phaser. What following phaser? This following phaser here. The phaser, though, again, is the exact same one as Captain Kirk's. Nothing's changed at all. I think what would have possibly been cool, too, I mean, seeing as these things flip around, one is for stun, one is for, like, vaporizing. Maybe if they had colored the tip on one of them being blue, and maybe colored the other one on red. So, you know, again, you could have given one to Kirk, one to Spock, and whoever's looking to kill, just give him the dedicated phaser for that. Of course, he does have, going back to that same well-housed hand, take the hand, take the phaser, and fit the two together. He has that. As for other options for hands, he does actually have this larger gripping hand, which doesn't really serve a purpose when you're kind of looking at really the lay of the land. It's not going to be good for the touchpad. It certainly, though, isn't going to be well for maybe the communicator, but the communicator sits a little loose in there. It almost seems like he really is having a hand, for example, for holding the apple, which Captain Kirk, maybe, no, that's not the hand. This is the hand for holding the communicator. This is the hand for holding the apple. Because, again, like if you're looking at the size of the width here, this is the exact same hand that we got with Captain Kirk. This is also the exact same hand that Captain Kirk used to eat the apple in the Kobayashi maneuver. So again, I don't know why, though, they decided to pack this along with Spock when he doesn't really have necessary accessories to justify having this hand packed with him. Of course, the figure does also have a smaller gripping hand, a couple closed fists, and finally, though, of course, if this is going to be a Vulcan, even if he's half a Vulcan, split in half, though, he does have himself the Vulcan sign, live long and prosper. I'll just show you what that looks like on the back. Yeah, see how there's all this extra red that's all over the plastic. Not sure really why. I noticed, though, that some of the faces also for Spock seems to have a little bit of that rouge there, too. If you did want to change out the hands, by the way, just grab this hand, for example. Easily, I say easily, carefully wiggle this off the provided post. take the hand that you want to use. So let's just grab, what hand do we want to use? You want to grab this hand? Okay, we'll grab this hand. And then when you're putting it on him, first roll up the sleeve so you can just get a good glance at where the peg is going to be. And then just kind of wiggle the hand on top of the post. You may notice, though, as you're doing this, that the post is going to go whoo, whoo, whoo. Just kind of make sure it stays in place. And of course, now that the hand is in place, take yourself the phaser if you want to do and decide to go to the phaser route. Take the phaser, fit into his hand. I would imagine, though, Spock's probably setting this thing to stun. Or you can also do is take the phaser carefully, and you can also holster that on the side, and that just tucks into the holster there on the side of his belt. Looks good. As for the other accessories, though, that come included with Spock, the figure does have 3 swappable head sculpts. We're going to start, though, with the defaulted head. This is the head that comes out of the packaging with him. Not a bad-looking likeness. Zachary Quinto. I'm sure I've made this story lots of times. Every single time we look at a Spock from 2009, I always say that when I originally watched Heroes, seeing Zachary Quinto playing, what was his name? Salus? No. It's going to come to me a little bit later. I always looked at him and I always thought right away, you know, if they ever remade Star Trek, hindsight, of course, Zachary Quinto would have made a perfect Spock. Sure enough, though, look at where we are. 3 films down. As far as I know, the cast is coming back for a 4th. Yeah, the likeness is pretty good. The red that he has, though, on the front of his face, there's a lot more of it right here. He's almost got himself a bit of a Vulcan sunburn. Oh, those are the worst. He does also come included with 2 other alternate heads as well. He has this one where it looks like he's a little bit more anxious. I don't think this one looks as much, though, like Quinto. And, of course, there's also this one. And it seems also, too, when we've looked at Kirk, of the 3 heads, there's one that's sort of in the medium. This is basically like, is it too hot, too cold? Who's the mama bear? Too cold, right? Too hot, okay. So like this one I guess is just like too hot. This one here is too cold. And then there's always the baby bear that's just right. So I don't think that this is really the strongest likeness to the actor. But I do though think that the 3rd one is probably the best. No, that's not the one. Let's grab the original one here. I think, though, that this is probably the best of the 3. I mean, this one's so close to this one. It has not much really does get changed for the mold. And yet, though, I think that this is the superior of the 3 heads. To also change the heads, just hold on to the torso. Watch the emblem, though. This is just attached by glue, so you don't want to flick this by accident and have that peel off the fabric. So we just pop the head off the ball joint, pop the new head then in place. One thing also with Spock, too, and I'm kind of going to do this as we kind of look at the figure, the coloring of the neck seems strangely dark compared to everything else around him. His hands aren't that color. His head certainly isn't that color either, and yet, though, his neck is a completely different, darker red, or this darker skin tone. Plug the new head then in place. And what I also like to do, too, and this is something I'm going to be also talking about when we look at the costume and the build of the body, when you get him out of the packaging, his head's really pushed down, and I did this also with the Chris Pine Kirk. When I like to put him down, I don't put the head all the way down because I like to show a little bit more neck. I find it helps to kind of balance off the proportions for the rest of the figure. As for certainly, though, the rest of his body, he does have the away team belt on. I know we've already kind of looked at that. One side, of course, holds the communicator. The other side holds the phaser. And if you want to detach this was a lot easier to detach than Kirk. If you've already seen my review of the Kirk, you know I had more of a struggle here. This one, actually, I didn't have to pinch this at all. I just basically held on one side here with my thumb, grabbed the other side with my other hand, and then just detached the belt. That's it. That's all you need to do. And then just snap this back in place. I'm sure, though, anybody that was watching my Captain Kirk review was probably thinking to themselves, like, why were you having such a struggle with the belt? Honestly, though, the clasp was super tight on Kirk's. And yet, though, on Spock's, so easy it is to detach it. I say that right now. Easy to detach it, and easy as well to put it back in place. So let's just take the belt off for right now. I think also when we look at McCoy isn't even going to have a belt. But that's basically what he would look like with this Starfleet Science uniform tunic. It looks good. I do really like the coloring of the blue that they chose here. Still, you've got like the Star Trek insignia in smaller size, basically just making up the majority of the fabric. He's got the panel lining here, some additional stitching that they've added to the shoulder corners. Also, they've done it around the top here as well. Of course, it's got a black top there underneath. If you lift up the top, you can actually see that there is a shirt underneath. The shirt is also very elasticy, very much more like a spandex. He's got the striping there on the sides of his arms. So like with Kirk, for example, you can see that he had the stripes of 3. Spock only has 2 stripes instead. Pants are exactly the same. The boots are exactly the same as well. And also, I would guess, too, that when we look at McCoy would basically follow the same format. So, looking, though, at the details, now that we've looked at the details, looking at the articulation here for Spock, head's going to be on a ball joint. So, yeah, already on its own, it can rotate all the way around. The neck is also something that's also on its own ball joint. So, between the two, up and down movement on just the head alone, then you get an additional look up and down with the ball joint at the base of the neck. Also moves back and forth there, too. The upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. The lower abdomen is also on a ball joint. I also didn't notice this as much with Spock, and I noticed it a lot more with Kirk. Like the build of the body, Spock seems like it adjusted a little bit better. Like proportionally, I know they're using basically the same body underneath, but I think though that Spock's seems to work better for his frame, or at least his figure, and it looked overly muscular for Captain Kirk's. Going back though to his arms, the arms hinge out at about 90 degrees, or about that T pose. They move forward, they move back. There's a swivel at the top where the bicep connects to the shoulder. There's of course that double hinge in the elbow, and the hands rotate all the way around. The legs do split about that far. You can take the legs and move forward. You can move them back. And would you believe, yeah, there's a little bit of a swivel there at the top of the thigh. A double hinge on the knee. There's articulation. More so just with the way that this is pegged in place. But then he does also have, even though this is encased in softer plastic, you probably can see by the way I'm squeezing it, there's actually a hinge built into the ankle of the feet, or the boots. So you can move it back and forth there as well. I still think I like probably Captain Kirk a little bit more, but I think like the likeness though is on Spock is really good. I also like too that he seems to be a little bit taller than Kirk, which I think is accurate too. What was the guy's name? Salas? No, it's going to come to me. It's going to come to me. Somebody's probably already frantically typing down below. Zachary Quinto, not a bad Spock at all. And for maybe, of course, a little bit of a stumbling point when it came to Into the Darkness, where I don't feel like we really need to incorporate Khan. Why was Khan even a bad guy? Oh, I just gave it away for anyone that hasn't seen Into the Darkness. But I do like the look of these figures. I do like that they've now used fabric instead of just the plastic bodies for the Exquisite miniseries. And they got quite a lot of accessories too. Some of the hands, though, don't jive as much for Spock, I would feel like. Like that larger gripping hand clearly seems more dedicated for the hand that, like, Kirk had it for his apple. I don't think Spock necessarily needed to have it. I would imagine they probably are just kind of rinsing and repeating the same hands and just using it with different figures. I mean, one thing that's unique, though, to Spock is the fact he does have the live long and prosper, which I'm sure will be making its way to the final looks as we wrap up this review. I was close. It was Sylar. Zachary Quinto played Sylar in the hit TV series Heroes. You know, one thing that's interesting, though, about Spock is just in preparation of getting this guy on the rotisserie, I want to make sure he had the live long and prosper Vulcan salute hand. Unfortunately, though, something I didn't mention in this review that I had to make sure I reminded myself to tack on to the wrapping up of the review is that all his hands do, well, all one side of his hands on his body does all the same functions. In other words, though, if you're looking to have this guy holding the phaser, holding the touchpad, or holding the communicator, they happen to unfortunately be all the same side as his Vulcan hand. So, which means, obviously, right away, if you choose to do one thing, that means then the hands can't be doing anything else. Yeah, you're probably already looking at, though, the communicator and think, well, wait a minute. How does he hold the communicator? Just barely. The answer to that, by the way. He's got a relaxed hand. I've sort of just got the communicator resting on it. If I was to sneeze or knock this guy in any way, that communicator would go flying. Now, maybe, again, it's just because the character is right-handed that they chose to have everything being on that one side of his body. But I think with a character like Spock, you'd like to maybe have a communicator or something else on the other side and not just always dedicated on the right side of the figure's body. Now, again, this guy is slated to drop in June 2025, so we're looking at this guy bright and early. A big thank you again to the folks over at Hiya Toys that did provide the sample that we could have a look at. The figure, by the way, though, of Spock, along with Captain Kirk, are going to be setting you back around $104.99 or about $105. For that, I don't think that's bad at all. You're getting 3 alternate head sculpts, you're getting tons of accessories, and many different swappable hands. Just again, with Spock, I wish he had more so he could double up the duty of holding his many accessories. Big thank you again to the folks, again, at Hiya Toys that did provide this sample. What do you guys think of Spock? Let me know down below in the comments section. I already have tipped my hat that we, of course, will be looking at McCoy. McCoy, yes, will be coming up during this week as well. In the meantime, if you guys did enjoy this video, you can do it a solid and throw it a like. If you guys want to stick around for more so, for that review of McCoy, and hopefully more so on top of that, hit the subscribe, turn on that bell, and come back. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.